Breakfast Clubbers. Coco's closed. I don't know why. And excuse me while you guys interrupt in the back. I don't know what happened. I haven't found out, but we just found out that they just closed. So we're going, okay, we scrambled, did it here. Fortunately, it's not 1 billion degrees. We're in June, and it's still at, global cooling or whatever. What we're going to go ahead and do is talk about solar, but I wanted to preface it while Steve's finishing his breakfast. Give me 5 minutes here. Yesterday, I did my first real show. I mean, we talked about and mentioned Jade Helm 15 and all that kind of stuff. But yesterday, I did the first in-depth show on it, started doing a little studying of what's going on. And it basically goes like this. For 3 months, starting July 15th, in the Southwest, they're doing all, we're being invaded by Durka Jihad, and we need paratroopers to come save us kind of thing. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to be doing training primarily between 11 at night and 4 a.m. and pay no attention to the explosions. Literally. Gunfire, blanks, and they're extracting people. This is about them going and targeting individuals and taking them out. This is, Crystal Knock kind of, Stasi, Stalin, door-by-door kind of crap. So I am just like, wow. So my question is are they trying to create an incident to justify them maintaining some kind of an existence in the States? Where it won't be just, you got your fire station, and now they're starting to merge them with police, precincts, and now you're going to have your little fusion center of Jade Helm people, okay? So I always go to people and say, we're not in a police state. And I'm going, well, what is your criteria? Well, a lot of times it's when you have soldiers with M16 standing on the corner. I go, well, here we go, okay? So this is, what is your reaction to it? And I'm getting the impression, the meeting that I went to, Ed Vallejo had a meeting last Friday, and it was discussing Justice Jade Helm thing. And I'm going, I've been through this before. Gary was there, Berta, and Bob Anderson and I, and we went. And Bob and I have been through this in the 90s, during all the malicious stuff that was going on. And if you've been around a while, you recognize the same tactics. It's all that be afraid, why you need us kind of thing. Well, they also use it, it's a psyop, get you accustomed to a lot of things, desensitize you. But also, it's kind of a prelude to something. To get you used to what's coming, the new norm kind of deal. I got the impression that they're trying to elicit a response. They want to see how you organize, who you meet with. Everybody's cell phone got a battery in it. I mean, so it's that kind of thing. There's a lot of information they can glean from what people say and or do. I always like to hit them from an unexpected, perpendicular, but relevant direction, to where they did not see that coming. There is a new movie that just released today. It goes on video on demand on Yekra and a lot of stuff online and on your Roku and all that kind of stuff, called Shadow Ring. And it's done by the people that did a noble cause, whatever it was, on the Oklahoma City bombing. Noble Lie. The Oklahoma City bombing is a great film. Then they did State of Mind. Then they did the most recent one, Shadow Ring, that focuses on James Perloff's work on the Council on Foreign Relations. This compilation of videos and interviews and so on, I think is it's over 2 hours. It went really fast, it was tight, and I think it is so essential as base information to understand what's really happening. When we became activists, we're in our late 20s, early 30s and so on, you had to see what was going on, Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral, they rule us, and central banking of it, we're cattle. As time goes on, you start to realize that this is, you're a conspiracy nut if you even say it. And then all of a sudden you have David Rockefeller and friends on the front page of their website taking pictures and celebrating their 40th anniversary. Of course we've always been here, and I'm going, wow, that was a nice gig. So the media has been part of this. I am of the opinion that Jade Helm and things like that is the dollar is about ready to go. Economically it's going to go, and then there's going to be all kinds of unrest. There's going to be another 2008. It's going to seem like a kindergarten party, and it's going to get bad. So in preparation for this, we've been doing the chickens and the aquaponics and battery production and working on the solar and so on. And that's what Steve's helping with, what he'll talk about today. My thing is that how do we respond to this? When I did the show Thursday with the people of the Shadow Ring, now I had Austin Green, one of the producers, on last week. This week I had on a lot of the guys involved with the film, and what's her name? James Perloff, the guy that did the screenplay and wrote the book that it was based on. Kevin Sorbo, which is Hercules and Andromeda and the actor, he did the narration, and we had him on, and talked to him. And my really question to him wasn't so much about the movie and its content. It was, how the heck do someone, got some street cred in Hollywood will lend his name to something like this? Is that a bird?
Feedback.
Too much volume. Just to hear much.
So I wanted to know how it is that, in Hollywood, that someone would come out and do this, and what price do you pay? What is the repercussions of, being able to lend a name to this kind of information? So we talked about that. Then we had one of the other producers, his name escapes me now, but he was making clear that there is a much larger understanding from the populace, and this movie was meant to serve that, and I agree with them. So now we're talking, of course they want to make their money back on, video on demand and all that, and I'm going, yeah, well I guess you're going to have to sue me for how many billions of movies I'm going to copy, okay? I always do that. Intellectual property, what's that, all right? So when Jade Helm comes, and I showed him, I said, you guys need to look at this, the trash can flyers. July 15th happened, Jade Helm hits, and what happens when we have tens of thousands of trash can flyers that go, when we did this before, while you were out, total information awareness, we went through your trash with a phone number that goes to the newsroom at the radio and television stations, newspaper and all that kind of stuff, made you look, and we always get television coverage for that. He goes, wow, this is an awesome idea. Yeah, live on the show, here's the PDF of it, here's the download. Right then, he downloads it, and he goes, oh, yeah, we're going to have some fun with this. So I'm going, Donna, what was the guy's name on Thursday from Shadow Ring? I can't remember.
Austin Green, and then you have James Perloff and Chris Emery.
Chris Emery, that's what I was thinking of, Chris Emery. I want to get that on tape, Chris Emery. So Chris Emery has been very supportive of us supporting them in the past. So we're going to be having video on demand that linked through Freedom's Phoenix. We're going to get the files and we're going to make a big deal out of this. So when you get, while you were out, we went through your trash kind of stuff, which people would freak out about. And by the time they find my number, they knew it was a spoof. But they had to call anyway. Oh, they wanted to give me what for? And the first thing I let them vent, and I go, it's interesting. I just have one question for you. By the time people get my number, they know that this is an education thing. But the only ones that will call me are law enforcement. I go, and it's because when they get it, they got that butterfly feeling in their stomach. They got that they have elicited from other people, the intimidation they've done on their neighbors and, in their community, they've never felt that. Well, when they feel it, they don't like it. And they want to vent, and they want to get some, and they want to explain it to you. And I go, so are you military intelligence or law enforcement? Well, yeah, retired. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay? Every single time. And I got probably not double digits, 6 to 10 calls around in there. And over each time, there was always somebody. It was always someone of this mindset. They had been common for them to give that impression, that feeling, that gut check to everybody else at first time that they felt it. And they didn't like it. I don't know what you ever do on my property. I go, we didn't go on your property. I didn't get out of my car. We didn't go up to your door. We just lifted the empty trash can, put it in there, and drove the next one. Peace. Okay? So if we did the same, and whatever website that's on there, the QR codes, and whatever we put up, we have aztiphotline.info. That's where it goes. And we'd be all serious about, so when you see something, say something, and the UPS driver and the SRP guy, gas meter reader, this guy wore a turban and turn you in and go get some. And I go, this is all true. And we would link the stories that you see at Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. All this stuff, you would have this. By the time law enforcement, they'd always get called, they'd look at it, they knew it was me. We have all kinds of articles and television programs. They try and call me, and I go, yeah, I got nothing to say, or I got something to say, or they knocking on they couldn't find me because we were at Libertopia. They wanted to get something. They see it banging on the door of my son on his house. And I go, hey, that was your house? He goes, oh yeah, they came by wanting to, looking for you. Did you ever think to tell me this? And he goes, nah, I didn't care. I didn't talk to him. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever, So this has been a very effective means by which to bring attention to something. Now, we used the Total Information Awareness logo that was in there, and a lot of people, I thought that was a spoof when that first came out back in 02, 03, around in there. And it's the all-seeing eye from the pyramid looking down on the earth. And I'm going, whoa. And it was real. Now they changed it to another logo because people freaked out. Yeah. Well, this Jade Helm extraction of militant crap, whatever that means, it's another psyop. So I go, and they have a Jade Helm logo. So of course, the trash can flyers are going to get that on there. And we're going to put that everywhere. And then what page does it go to? Well, we got this site for it. But what do we put on there? And what's the solution? Unexpected, perpendicular, but relevant direction. If I put on there, you want to get off of all this crap, get out from under their surveillance and control, go solar. Have some vegetables. Get a couple of chickens. What's the solution to this kind of oppression? This state control, we rule, you got tapped in on the grid stuff. Is start to extract yourself from the grid. Wallet voting. Voting with where you put your money. Voting with investing in yourself and your home. Your children, your own ability to sustain yourself in the desert. With, they just flip off the energy. Oh, you don't got air conditioning this summer or enough water, man, you are screwed. You be begging. I'm down at, Banqueland Ballpark or Chase, wherever it is this week. You go in there and you say, hey man, where's my bottled water and I need, my, gum and cheese, okay? So as a philosophical, as a political decision for us to extract ourselves from the system, the grid, that is the most effective thing that I believe that we can do, and I'm going to be focusing on this very thing. In fact, we have been for years. Steve Neal has been, I just want to give you one stat that'll get you interested. He's been working, he's semi-retired, he's got time, he's down there, being, you can go to these public meetings at SRP? Well, hello, I may be the only guy, but I'm here every time, okay? We're going to find out what's going on with solar. What he has done, he has, 2,300 square foot home or something about that? He has, how many acres, 5 or?
Just one.
1 acre. 1 acre, 2,300 square foot home, 2 electric cars. His total transportation cost, energy cost for his automobiles, for his home energy, for last year was $198. They don't like him none too much. Now they used to. When they got all kinds of subsidies and incentives and they're all green and everything, and they're stimulating somebody that special interest that paid for in the Democratic re-election of give me some money, then they love solar. Right up until they start to, damn, this is like real competition. They're gonna now I have, and he's going to give the numbers and get all specific, but as I understood it, in 1994, we did an initiative, and we had our paper, Citizens Take an Initiative, CTI. One of the initiatives of 36 that we did was a power buyback initiative, and it was a constitutional amendment, and it was real simple, and it said this. Every kilowatt that I put back on the grid, you give me a third of it in credit. If you can't make money on 2/3 of what I produced, then you got other issues, okay? Well, not only are they doing that, they're only giving you credit for a quarter of it coming back. And they're selling that power, and then they want more to charge you for the privilege of them selling your power. And I'm going, something's wrong here. Yes. Steve hadn't been to all the meetings yet. So What I am looking for is we have a double axle boat trailer over here that's set aside for just this purpose Steve's going to help us with. I'm first going to take my studio when I do my radio show to be able to produce enough solar power to run my entire show, because it's tripping breakers all the time. We got extension cords running around different circuits to be able to power my studio. Because we have like 10 computers going on, a power supply and the board and the internet. I mean, it takes a lot of power. So if I can get my studio off grid, even if they shut it off, we're still broadcasting. Enough battery backup to do it. Now, I don't want to be feeding back into this system, because then you get all kinds of regulation. But all I do need is just a little AC going to charging the batteries on that in case it's cloudy or something, and I'm good. I got 3 hours. I can run my studio and I'm off grid, and we inspire and show and demonstrate and we're done. Okay? That system, I'm not sure exists, and he's talked about, did some research you might be able to do, because I don't want to feed back. When you start feeding back, then you still get all these little charges if I got to charge and more charge, all right, which you're going to have anyway. So as a political weapon, as a wallet voting, as an answer, perpendicular, unexpected, but relevant direction to things like Jade Helm, that is a political decision, we are able to start extracting ourselves from the grid using this kind of fear tactic as a motivation for people to look at a freaking flyer of, ooh, we went through your trash and we're going to get some. We got it on the corner with an M16 and that Circle K. So I'm buying more solar panels. What? Yeah. Oh, you banker energy people, you pissed me off. I'm getting more solar panels. Ooh, curse you, Red Baron. Okay? So this is why I want to take advantage of this. We're going to go, we got the printing press, we got the artwork, and we're going to use the movie Shadow Ring as one of the pieces of information on that page so people understand the much larger ramifications. They're going to back up their 18-wheeler full of lemons to Arizona, and I got a big, giant freaking lemonade stand and say thank you. Steve Neal's going to help us make sure that we make the right decisions with the right equipment and the right information that we share amongst ourselves and to the public, so that we understand not only the equipment stuff we need to do this, but what the political and corporate policies are for this monopolistic Arizona corporation, we rule you kind of sort of municipal special city of SRP versus APS, and kind of you're not allowed. Because what do? You're not allowed to collect rainwater. God gave me manna from heaven. It comes with a food tax. See my point? So we're going to learn about this, and we're going to go at them in an unexpected direction. They're not going to see this coming. And Steve Neal's going to help us. Steve Neal. Now, he was going to do a PowerPoint, but you wouldn't be able to see it. So we're going to do some pass out so you can see the frames as he's talking about it. All right.
Well, the volume will probably fall quite a bit. Can you still hear me back there, or is your eardrums blown out? So, yeah, it's great to be here. I first met Ernie through the Levolution. I was a delegate to the Tampa convention for the Republican Party. Yeah. And there should be plenty of those for everybody. Yeah, there's 30 of them. So I was a delegate to the convention in Tampa for the National Republic Convention, and so I worked with. I first saw Ron Paul when he came to town in 2007, and he was over at that little place where we used to have the Breakfast Club. Where was that, Ernie? Over on Scottsdale Road.
The Country Harvest.
Yeah, and been a big fan of this kind of thing. Now I don't run in the libertarian crowd a whole lot. I work in the professional computing consulting business, and I run with some of the big dogs in town business-wise, but I don't, will you raise that up just a little bit? Oh, okay, great. And I don't speak into a microphone all day long. I think Ernie's got one in his bedside, too. And so, it's great. I'd like to pay a little bit of homage to Donna, too. I mean, she's just amazing. Donna, can you hear me?
Yay!
She's working extra hard today. She's working hard all the time, supporting this cause, and Ernie couldn't have a better helpmeet ever. So A little bit more of my background is since I was a child, I've been just fascinated with solar energy and energy efficiency. And I remember when I was 17 years old and I first started studying passive solar things in earnest, I was about to go on a Mormon mission, and I swore by the time I got back that the whole world would have turned solar because it was just the best thing that there was. But not much happened while I was gone, to be honest with you, other than Paradise Valley Mall was built, and the desert turned into a parking lot. So your handout there is, I'm kind of focusing today on energy freedom, and then I'd be happy to take any questions. And before I forget, if you want to write my phone number down right by my name on that front page, if you have a pen, or if not, I can loan you one later. My cell phone number is 480-861-4885. And it's on Verizon, so I can't say I didn't get your call. So the amazing thing is, over the years I've built about 3 homes that had some really interesting energy techniques to them. So interesting that I got a call from SRP just a couple months back that said, hey, we saw you at the hearings, and to be honest, I'm going to confess that we looked at your power bills, and what is it you do at your house other than solar that makes your house so unusual? And I said, well, I understand solar, I understand energy storage and mass walls, I understand all kinds of things about how a building works, and because I've experimented with it. When I was 21, through 25, I was running the largest home building company in Arizona. At 21, I was running field operations, so that's a little bit unusual. But I grew up, I'm the son of a general contractor, and I grew up in building buildings big and small. My dad built Tri-City Mall, Los Arcos Mall, a bunch of skyscrapers in downtown Phoenix, and so I grew up in the business of building things. And that combined with my avid interest in energy usage by those buildings led me to a lot of discoveries that I've never really applied outside of my own little world, because I got into computers and people paid me so much to program computers for them that I didn't really have much chance to exercise anything for anybody else. So that's a little bit about me. Today, Ernie's got it right on the head, and I'm kind of cute, and I got to give him credit for a lot of these things that I'm going to say today, because he gets it really well. And this freedom, and Adam Kokesh, I've been supporting him, his run around the country. I hope he's having a great time. And also passing out his books. I got a box of his books, and so I'm happy to plagiarize his thing right there on slide number 2, that it's all about freedom. So if you haven't read Adam's book, I'd recommend that. If you haven't listened to his MP3 on YouTube or anything like that, that's the easier way to do it if you don't have time. So what we got going on here in the energy sector is we've got, if we want to flip to the next page, I'll go ahead and just right out call it tyranny, because in the electrical energy sector we've had these monopolies all these years, and they've just gotten to be misbehaving quite a bit here, and they are throwing their weight around big time now that this micro competition, it's competition, but literally here in Arizona, for all the solar panels you see, it represents about 1% of the total energy consumption. No, it doesn't even represent that. It represents about 1% of the total customers and about 0.5% of the total energy consumption, or 0.7%, I think is what I heard in APS territory. So it's a very small amount of power, yet they have come out of their shoes swinging at the solar industry and the wind industry to try to stop this from going forward. And, I spoke at a hearing in January and said, I don't know, SRP's getting good points here towards the Darwin Award for the first big electric utility to really make a mess of things. So they've got a huge lawsuit against them by Solar City right now, that if literally it could cost them and the SRP customers $100 million if it goes through, if Solar City wins. So we'll see. So, most all electric utilities are monopolies. And you see that little picture there, that's a picture from India. That's what things look like when you don't have a monopoly sometimes, or you don't have people watching, where you haven't set up any order in your system. So it is possible. Monopolies are good for one thing, but they've taken it a lot way past that. They've taken it to where they want control and dominion over everything in their domain, not just to run an orderly house. So I'm a big fan of Neil Howe and William Strauss's books, Generations and The Fourth Turning. I've read both of them multiple times. And so what we have here, we have these monopolies, and Strauss-Howe theory teaches us that we're in the winter time, we're in a bad time in the cycle right now, and that the things that happen is our institutions fail. Our schools go downhill, they need more money, they function more poorly. Our government institutions become decayed and rotten. Even our electric utilities, because they're an institutional monopoly, they start to fail us too. And and you think about it, if you had a monopoly, that would be, and it was an institution, that'd be the one that was going to fail the most, and it'd be even more decay. Oh, thank you. So we had a big push for deregulation in the 1990s of the electric utilities, and that went forward in a couple states. Texas is the most notable example of where it actually went forward. I have a daughter who lives in Houston. Every time she moves back to Houston, because she works, her husband works for Schlumberger, the big oil field services company, they constantly have to ask me, what do you think's the best, we got our local utility, that's set, but who are we going to buy our power from? And that power company is then going to decide who they're going to hire to transmit it. Are they going to go to the south of Texas to get it to Houston, or are they going to come down from the north to get it in there? And it's all decided, it's all business, it's all done, it's working very well in Texas. In Arizona, it died on the vine. It never really happened. In California, it got partially there and really got kind of messed up in a lot of ways that would take me a long time to talk about. So now we've got, if you want to flip to page 4, like Ernie said, the utilities, they used to love solar, and they had some incentives for that. They could, with the EPA and with the Department of Energy, they could get some credits. They could get some, they called them renewable energy credits and other types of credits depending on the type of fuel they were displacing. If they were displacing coal with solar, that was like heaven sent for them to keep it in the good graces of the EPA. And if they were doing other things, it was, it was all good for them. So they decided that, wow, we will get in this business of promoting solar. We'll do big campaigns, we'll collect money from all the customers, and we'll give that money back to those who want to put their money into solar. And that's how I got into solar. Well, that's not true. I had my first system back in 1999, and is it Mike? Was it Mike?
Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. Mike is telling me he has a system too. And my first system cost me $5 a watt just for the panels, and $11 for the entire system per watt. So just to run 100 watt light bulb would cost me $1,100 to run 100 watt light bulb. So it didn't have a great payback. There weren't much incentives back then. There was no federal tax credits. There was no utility incentives and things like that. So it was very interesting. But I did it just because I'd always wanted to do it, and they'd come down from $15 a watt to $5 a watt for a panel. So time to buy. And so later on, in the around 2005, the utilities started paying incentives and started really promoting solar. And as people saw it and they heard it and they saw down the block a system went up, then they'd stop by and talk to them, or they'd talk to their contractor and they'd do the same thing. And so it started to grow, and it started to very exponentially grow. But what happened was the big money got into this. They saw that, wow, this is a pretty good business model. This is a pretty good business model, and we can do a lease with people, and we can get Wall Street to loan us a ton of money. And so companies like Solar City established themselves, and other leasing companies like Sun Edison and Sunrun, and they just did solar systems. They made the little contractor who came out to talk to you about your house and get you just what you wanted. They made him look like he was literally an ant standing next to an elephant. the leasing companies started putting in about 95% of the systems in Arizona. And that's what got the attention of the utility companies here. And they said, well, we're not so much against solar, but these guys are cutting into our paycheck. And those executives at these utility companies, it's all about the paycheck. One APS executive last year made $10 million. $10 million a year in salary and stock bonuses. So when they start to see that, this could take the edge off of our growing market, and Arizona's just been a great place to be an electric utility because it just grows like a weed here. So that's what's been happening. So they decided that they hate solar now, and they got to put like I said, they got to put the damper on it. So they've SRP in February passed it's the worst in the nation attack on solar customers, charging them more, putting them on a special type of rate that nobody else in SRP territory has to be on, have to pay demand charges. Now, the APS has been charging demand charges for 35 years for residential customers, but SRP never has. But APS came out with a whole program of education and assistance to help people manage their demand charges. SRP just said, hey, you're the rich people putting solar on, just deal with it. And so it was really crude and rude and unrefined in many ways. So Tucson Electric has just decided, petitioned the Corporation Commission at the bottom of page 4 there, that they're going to only pay the wholesale rate for renewable energy and not pay the retail rate. So let's talk about that. What is that retail rate? What is net metering? So top of page 5 talks about net metering. And you got to understand this to understand the dynamics of what's going on. And it's really simple. If you have solar on your house, if you have a generator on your house and it can sync with the grid, and I don't care if that's a gasoline, diesel generator, wind, whatever, it has to be able to sync with the grid with the wave pattern. You heard of 60 hertz. That means every 60 times a second, it goes from minus 120 volts to positive 120 volts every 60 seconds. 60 times per second. Excuse me. And so you can backfeed the grid without blowing fuses, without causing things to go for the magic smoke to get out of them. And you'll end up with being able to run your meter backwards. The meter will actually spin backwards if it's an old style meter. If it's a new style smart meter or an electronic meter, instead of the arrow blinking this direction, it'll start blinking this direction, meaning the power is going back to the grid. So what SRP and APS did in Tucson Electric, and it's done differently across the country, but I'll stick to how they do. They allow your meter to run backwards as much as you want, but at the end of the year, they're going to settle up with you. Now for APS, that's December 31st. For SRP, it's your April bill. They're going to settle up with you, and they're going to say, well, you were negative like I was. I think it's on the next page. You can see page 6. You can see my actual bills there for the past 12 months. That little pink box up at the top right says I was minus 935 for those 12 months. So SRP, instead of letting me carry that 935 over to this summer, because maybe it's going to be a hot summer or whatever, they just wrote me a check for the wholesale rate of 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. 3.5 cents, where they charged me about 11, 12, so it's less than 1/3 than what they pay out. Now they say that's what they can buy the power for, and that's true. That's what they can buy it for. But the power excess I produced, it didn't have to go through a power plant with 1,000 people there running it. It didn't have to do anything. It was lucky to get to my next door neighbor, that extra power. And that's just the beautiful things of how electricity works. It goes out on that wire, and those electrons just go wherever they need to go, wherever there's a call for them. And it went to my neighbor's house. That's as far as it got.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was literally on their grid for about 100 feet. Used about 100 feet of their grid. So that's how solar got going. Net metering, allowing the meter to run backwards, and then allowing you to use that credit, basically that banked power, use it later in the year, maybe later here in Arizona we do have seasons. We have hot and cold, hot and cool. And so you look at that little graph there, you'll see that in
I can tell you,
In the summer and the winter, I consume more than I produce, but in the spring and the fall, I produce more than I consume. So that net metering balances out very nicely. Now people say, we'll talk about this later when we talk about getting off the grid. People say that, wow, I'm just going to pull the plug. Well, I'm going to have banked by the end of this month about 1,200 kilowatt hours because it's been pretty mild. May was just absolutely beautiful. Don't tell anybody. Arizona will have 20 million people in it if it sticks around like this. But so we had about, I banked 1,200 kilowatt hours. I'll chew that up in the summer in a heartbeat. But to bank 1,200 kilowatt hours into a battery bank, I don't care what kind of battery bank it would it'd fill up a shipping container. And it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to bank that much power and to be able to use it. And if it was lithium-ion batteries, really high, good chemistry batteries, you'd be able to get most of that back out without losing it. They're very good at storing the energy, and they're very good at releasing it at low cost, high efficiency. So that's the beautiful thing about net metering. And that's what made solar pay back so well. And that's what they're coming against all across the country is net metering. You'll hear that. Another thing so let's move on. This is a whirlwind tour of this whole industry and this whole business. Other states have done some very innovative net metering. The next one I'd like to talk about is community solar. On the radio show, Ernie asked the question, could I set up, I've got a lot of space here, could I set up a solar farm and sell power to my neighbors? Well, no.
No, the answer's always yes. It's just whether I get SWAT teamed or not.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So Arizona really has no community solar laws, and they have no utilities who are willing to work with you on programs. Up in Utah, they got a pretty decent program where if you had a little community park and it was sunny and people weren't using the playground equipment, you could set a canopy up on that thing and you could sell shares to it, and you could say this whole park system's costing $1 million. We need 1,000 people to buy $1,000 worth of this park community solar, and you will finance it for you, and it'll be on your bill, and it's only going to raise your bill $3 a month, and you're going to get it for 10 years, and after that you'll be getting free power, unless you sell your share to somebody else on the open market. So it's a very, it's done a lot in the northeast part of the United States, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont also. So that kind of thing happens there. But in Arizona, you have to negotiate this with the utility company, and they want to charge you a lot of money. They call this, when they move power, let's talk about aggregate metering, which is on the bottom of page 7. Aggregate metering is where you have multiple meters, but you want to combine them together because one is spinning backwards most of the time, and one is spinning forward like about to throw the bearing out. So you balance those two or multiple meters together, and you get a decent bill. And a lot of states and utilities, in California this is very common, and you'll see on the map on the next page where California has the best metering arrangements. So you end up with all these cool things that are getting done, this innovation. And this innovation happens a lot in Europe. Germany and the Netherlands and Norway. Norway has the highest penetration of electric cars of any nation on earth, amazingly, even though they got the North Sea oil going for them too. They want to sell that North Sea oil. Better to use nuclear or hydro to make energy than it is to sell that expensive oil to somebody else. So it's just amazing the type of innovation that goes on out there, but none of it occurs in Arizona. None of it. All we got was basic 1 meter net metering. That's all we got. No aggregate, no community, no virtual, nothing special. So let's talk about the type of technology that makes this metering possible. Smart meters. This is going to strike a nerve with some of you, but I'm not going to talk about the radio frequency aspects of smart meters, and I'm not going to talk about the surveillance state kind of aspects, and they are there. They're very real. These things can track data down, and they're hooked up on a military-grade network, and they're communicating to the hubs, and the hubs are communicating to the utility, and they literally, if they want, they can watch you real time, if they want. They can watch your energy consumption real time. Well, I want to talk about the control issues, the control features of these smart meters. So the smart meter that most utilities use in Arizona is perfectly capable of just shutting off your power anytime. It has a relay inside it, or a solid state switch, and it can just, at the receipt of the command and confirmation of the command, your power will go off just like somebody come out and yanked your meter right out of the socket. And there's nothing you can do to go put your meter in other than yank your meter out and replace that meter, that continuity with something else is the only thing you can do to get around that. So that is true. There's no doubt about that. You can read the brochures for the meter manufacturers. It's a feature they advertise to utilities, that you don't have to send somebody out when they don't pay their bill. You don't have to send somebody out. You just go to their account and click here, turn off power, done. They also have a lot more capabilities. Mike was talking about his system, and we'll keep it off the air. But the fact is that they now with these smart meters, and they have so much data being collected by them, they can tell if you have a generation system on site, whether that be solar, wind, something else, fuel cell, kids on a bicycle with an eBay grid tie inverter hooked to it. They can tell that you're generating power, because there's going to be some time when everything but a little clock, everything shuts off in your house except for a little clock that's drawing 2 watts or something. There's going to be that time at 3 a.m. sometime on a beautiful day, and that's going to happen. And if you've got any kind of thing going, or it happens during the middle of the day on a beautiful day, they're going to see that solar system backfeeding. Now, how many of the utilities fix your wagon is, instead of letting your meter run backwards, in essence, and crediting you for that energy, they charge you for any backfed energy as a punishment for not letting them know that you had your own generation system. So this is a new capability allowed by smart meters that they never had before. Those old spinning dials, that wheel it could only spin this way or that way. That's all it could do. But now, so if you have solar and you don't cooperate with the utility and you backfeed to try to lower your bill, because you'll backfeed during the day and then you'll use it up at night, or you'll use it the next month, and all those kind of things. But they've got that fixed where they will actually charge you. And until you call up and say, hey, I just don't understand why my bill's so high. And they will just have this little sly conversation with you. And I've talked to the people at SRP who have these conversations with people, and they say, yeah, we play a little game with them, and we say, did you happen to do anything to your house to change its energy profile? And they finally found out that, yeah, well, I added solar. Well, you have to go through us. And then they make them come down and shut off their system, and it usually takes about 6 months for the inspector to actually show up and do the thing. So that's how they control people's use of their own electrical grid inside their home and the grid outside of their home. So the new buzzword, going to page 9, is self-consumption. Because the utilities are really coming out hard against people on this way, they're penalize them in every possible way they can get away with. They're making it the least financially attractive. The new thing is to try to consume as much as possible. So you might have heard a month ago about the Tesla announcement about the Tesla Powerwall, Tesla Motors. I should always say Tesla Motors, because it's not just Tesla. That's the genius man who lived back in Niagara Falls. So they want you to consume as much as possible. Now, you can do that by, there's DC to AC inverters now that you can program them. This is the principal brain in the solar system, is the DC to AC. It takes DC from the panels, turns it into AC for the grid of your house and the grid of the utility, and it syncs. The very important thing is that it syncs with the utility. If you buy a cabin type system, an off-grid type system, a lot of those systems don't have the capability to sync with the grid, so you could never connect them to the grid safely. So battery storage, and then also banking heating and cooling energy into building mass or water is another way to bank it. I'm about to finish up a little thing. I'm doing a little electronic add-on I'm doing to my system that I make distilled water, and it's very inefficient. It's terribly inefficient. It's an electric distiller, but it gives me an easy way to bank energy when I don't want the utility to get it for practically free. I can put it into something myself. So I'm working on the control circuitry to turn on this distiller automatically and use up excess power. So other people are doing things like some of the new water heaters, electric water heaters, have controllable set points via a communication mechanism. They can actually take their water up to 160 degrees when they've got excess energy and drop it down to 130 when they don't, and have the best of both worlds. So pulling the plug. I already heard a couple of times, heard that mentioned today about pulling the plug, and so let's talk a little bit about that. You get no grid at all. You get just self-generation and self-consumption, and that works out well. One of the key factors is climate, or your comfort in the climate, I should say. If you have heating and cooling demands and they're electrically based, it's going to be tough to do that. Yes?
Is it legal in the SRP and APS environment to go off grid while you're in their zone?
I don't know that the question was, is it legal to go off the grid here in Arizona, basically? I don't know that anybody's ever tested that, but I would say yes, because APS, and APS especially, sells off-grid systems to people and leases them to them at a very low cost, where they're set up a cabin in the middle of nowhere, for example, or a little summer home, and they don't want to be required to bring power out to them. They will instead set up a modular solar system for them and connect it to their house. And it has APS written all over it, and they lease that thing to them for the same price as. Usually there's some charges involved in bringing power out to the cabin, but they don't come anywhere near paying for the actual expense of running miles and telephone poles and that kind of thing. So they're allowed to charge them like $5,000 or something, and they let them pay that off over time at $3 a month or something. So yeah, I would say in Arizona we shouldn't have any problem. But I heard conversation ahead of time here about the stories that have made the news across the country, especially the Leda in Florida. Was it Coral Gables? Does anybody remember? Yeah. Something like that, where she had some financial setbacks but had solar and just decided to live off the solar, and that didn't work out very well because the authorities in the area, now I was going to cover this on the next slide, they always try to throw in something about safety or about sanitation or something like that to say that this is the reason why we shut this lady down or we shut this house down, was because of these reasons. But I think that many times that's a cover for the control and power that people want to have over. We can't have people telling good stories about being off the grid and how great it was. In Florida the climate's more mild here, but it is quite warm there. So going off the grid in Arizona completely in the deserts here is pretty tough. Yes?
Okay, no.
No questions?
Let's go,
Okay.
Let's go through this. We'll never get through this.
Okay.
And then we'll do questions later.
All right, great, thanks. So let's talk about leaving the grid, landing in jails, what I just talked about, and then shared consumption. So I'm going to step away from the microphone for a second. All right, so for an experiment, I have a neighbor, his power panel is literally like 40 feet from my power panel. And when I was building my house, I put an extra outdoor outlet out there to pay him some money, so I didn't have to run stinky diesel generators, gasoline generators the whole time. And I put an outlet back there. And I came up to him one day and I said, hey, I'm producing excess solar power. Could we run a little experiment to see if I could, feed you some power, and I'll measure it with this little handy-dandy device here. And if you have any concerns, you just come out and disconnect it, okay? Now, the reason why you get safety concerns about this kind of thing is see what you have to do to backfeed power. See something very unusual about this cord?
Two positives.
Yeah, so power's coming in this end, power's coming out this end, and it's hot and it's exposed. So that's a problem. So to do this properly, there are connectors out on the market that shield each other, where the connector's completely shielded inside. So even if it was to come apart, a child would not do it. But for the experiment, I grabbed this out of there and I went to Home Depot and got this for $2.50, and I made this jumper to make this possible, this experiment. And then this little device came off of eBay. It's like a kilowatt, but this is a better one because if the power goes out, this retains the values. It doesn't lose it. And it was $12 on eBay. So we pumped back about 300 kilowatt hours that month through this 15 amp circuit back to his house and lowered his bill by 300 kilowatt hours. And so it can be done, and it just has some safety concerns. There's a spider in there. And so that's something to consider. Now, if Ernie was to do something here and he wanted to share some power with his shop over here, which is a separate meter, he would have the option of doing something like that to share some power if he's got excess power. And on your own property, I don't think they can say a word to you. Now, crossing a property line, I'm still in the process of trying to get some hard answers from Arizona Utilities, but the unofficial answers I've gotten is absolutely we won't allow that. So we're not going to allow you to share power with your neighbor. We're the ones who handle the power in Arizona, or in this territory.
Damn it.
Yeah. So let's measure this. Let's take a look at metering or measuring this energy freedom in the U.S. So it's amazing. The liberal states tend to have more electrical energy freedom than the conservative states if you look at the red and blue map. And amazingly also here in the Southwest, where there's just an incredible amount of sunshine, we don't have what they have in this cloudy areas like the Northeast and Oregon. We just don't have it. We don't have the freedom. We've gone over that. And in Arizona here, the next slide down, traditional net metering is not available to any people who add solar from starting back in January 2014 for APS customers and starting in April of this year for SRP customers and starting later this year for Tucson Electric customers. But despite the utilities saying solar is no good, you little guys shouldn't do it, they're getting into it in a big way. SRP contracted with an outfit to do a big system out by Florence, southeast of the valley. Huge solar system, one of the biggest ones built in Arizona, and SRP is buying 100% of the output. And they're using some of the monies that they used to get from, I was explaining this to Ernie earlier, he was showing me his APS bill, and it's got 15, 20 different charges on it. And I said, well, look at this one right here. This is the money they take from you and all of your neighbors. They take just a little bit every month. You got a $200 bill, they want $5 every month. And they take that $5 and they put it into the Environmental Programs Fund. Now that fund used to go to incentivize people to spend $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a solar system for their house to reduce those costs. They used to spend that money saying, oh, okay, you spent 50 grand, here's 15 grand from APS for going solar to help defray those costs. And now all that money is going to the big projects. It's not going to the little people anymore. They've decided the costs have gone down so far, and who drove down those costs? All the little people making billions and trillions of dollars of investments across the world. All the little businesses, all the little people, the little customers. It wasn't the government think tanks that drove down the cost. It wasn't the utilities who drove down the cost. It was all the little people being willing to cough up $5 out of every bill and cough up this, and then for their neighbor to go spend a tremendous sum of money and put themselves at tremendous risk, to see, well, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I'm going to go because I believe in it. So that's what's happened in Arizona. So I call this, and this kind of thing, that's what's gone on with the leasing companies. I call it what's gone on with the leasing companies. Oh, okay. Great. Does that sound good? I'll just go ahead and I call this big trucks versus big bucks. The leasing, the utilities got all these big trucks. SRP just announced at their board meeting on Monday that this week, they now have the largest truck in the world. It will go to 230 something feet up in the air to work on these very large towers you see running across Arizona to service them, and they barehand. The guys get up there and they're literally wearing nothing but gloves to keep from getting a splinter in their hands. They're not touching the wires. They're touching 230,000 volts with their bare hands running through those wires. And this truck cost $1.9 million. So they've got some big trucks. But the big bucks guys came along, and that's the leasing companies, and they saw a great business model, and they put a lot of pressure on the utilities. And the utilities don't like the bad PR coming out against solar. But they're really interested in protecting their executive paychecks, what they're really interested in protecting. So the little guys like us, we have to get the same treatment. Real quickly, I'll tell you what I've been involved with in SRP. They announced in November that they were coming out with this draconian rate increase and new rate structure for new solar customers, and they were going to force old solar customers onto it. If you rented out your house, or if you leased it, or you sold it, or in 10 years, whatever, you're going on to the new draconian rate. And it made APS look like the purriest, fluffiest, nicest pussycat you ever saw, and which is tough to do. That's pretty tough to do. And so I decided that, boy, it's time to get involved. And I'm not in this business. I don't have any money in the solar industry. I don't do anything that, this wasn't goring my ox at all. So I went there and I learned that the utilities really don't know their business that well. They were really, didn't even understand what they were doing when they did it. They didn't, when they were promoting solar, they had no idea what the impact down the road was on that. They just knew nothing. They're just not very good at their business. What they're really good at is getting big paychecks. That's what I've decided. And so SRP is just constantly calling itself community-based nonprofit. And what I saw was just a bunch of people who don't like the public attending their meetings. It's a nuisance and had to be sued by Chino Valley and Prescott Valley cities to tell them that, hey, you are a public entity and you're a political subdivision of the state of Arizona, and you are required to abide by the laws of the state of Arizona. So they wouldn't turn over any documents to anybody. They wouldn't let people into their meetings unless they felt like it. And they would use all kinds of things to get rid of you. As a matter of fact, the very first board meeting I attended, if we go to page, we're at the bottom of page 14. The very first board meeting I attended outside of the rate hearing process, I was ushered out of the meeting. And I didn't know, I thought I was their guest. I didn't really know what the thing, what my rights were with them. I didn't really know what they were, who they were. They ushered me out of the meeting, and so I called up Ryan Randazzo at the Arizona Republic and said, hey Ryan, I don't know anything about this kind of stuff, but I see you've written articles about it, about SRP and public meetings, open meetings. So what happened here? And he goes, oh my gosh, thank you for the story. Thank you for the headline story. This is going to be in the Sunday paper. It's going to be above the fold. Sure enough, it was. And it was the story that, SRP kicks a customer out. Well, they got word that Ryan was writing the story, so what do? They fire the people who told me to leave. That's their fix. Fire the poor guy who was following somebody else's orders or whatever, and told me to leave. So that's how that got going. So I've been denied access to their public records also. We've kind of gotten past that one after a few Ryan Randazzo stories. They must think I go to lunch with Ryan every day. But I have only seen him twice in my entire life. And one of those times was at the SRP hearings when there was hundreds of other people there. So we just do not, it's just not the way they think it is. It's just the fact that they're behaving very badly and that they, need to get their act together and be more community-based and hopefully a little less profit-oriented. Now the executive of SRP is about to tick over $1 million in base salary this year. He'll get his good news here later this month, and I expect it'll be right around there. So it's a serious matter. So showing up to meetings, I have been the only member of the public at every meeting in April and May and June so far. But I'm trying to get some help. I'm going on vacation for July and August, so I'm recruiting help now. They're held the first Monday, almost always. You have to check the SRP website. The first Monday, it's over at the Project Administration Building at 1521 North Project Drive in Tempe. I think it's Tempe, yeah. And they could use some company. It helps them behave better. They will recognize you personally because it's not a long list. It might just be you. And it's very fascinating to hear. Make sure if you ever go to a board meeting to look around to see what materials the board members have. And to say, oh, well, I want to see what they have. for information. They are not allowed to prohibit you seeing any information that's being considered by the elected board. Same for a school board, same for a city council. You're entitled to see everything they see. Now they
See
can't.
or have? Have a copy or just see it?
You're not entitled to retain a copy, but you're entitled to inspect the records. Take a camera with you and take pictures.
There you go.
Yeah. You can turn the shutter off the shutter noise off if you think it's bothering them, but take all the pictures you want. And that keeps them honest. And it's very important that there be some checks and balances.
On the profit issue, are they classified as a nonprofit or for profit, or because I don't care if somebody makes a profit,
No,
you know, but they're monopolies.
So there's basically two types of what they call investor-owned utilities and nonprofit utilities, co-ops, things like that, what they call them. So SRP is that co-op type where they're not supposed to make a profit. They're supposed to, if they have an excess over what they budgeted, it just goes right back into the pot, and maybe they don't have to charge as much next
Mike.
time.
You're bleeding over, man.
Is that the first Monday, did you say?
Usually the first Monday. You have to go to, just type in SRP agendas on Google, and it'll take you to the website and show you. In July, the meeting is not till the 13th.
That's okay, I'm not gonna be here.
Okay. In August, it's the first Monday.
We'll
So-
get this information on Freedom's Phoenix, encourage people to go and have some education behind it.
And the Corporation Commission hearings are equally interesting. And the fascinating thing about going to a Corporation Commission hearing is that it's a much more judicious process at the Corporation Commission. At the SRP hearings, it's kind of decayed into kind of a good old boys
Crony capital.
crony capitalism kind of approach, where the management proposes something and the board says, "Wow, it's almost lunchtime. Man, are we going to talk about this anymore? Or are we going to have lunch? Let's vote on this," kind of thing. So there are some board members who do a tremendous job of looking at things, but let's talk about that. There's been a lot of talk about, how much does the electric side subsidize the water side? Now, that was one of the original ideas behind Theodore Roosevelt Dam and Roosevelt Lake, was that we're going to back this water up so we can use it during the summer, and we're going to produce power year-round, especially during the summer. More water in the summer, more power. This is beautiful. We need this, and we'll use this power to pump the water, and if we get any excess, we'll sell it, and we'll use that money to put back into the system to lower the cost of water. Well, I'm in the process of a public records inspection process, and it's going very slow. They just can't seem to find all the records I'm looking for, clear back to 1903, but they're going to find them eventually, I think. The subsidies, so far, the data I've seen, the subsidies are just getting out of control. It's now to the point that if they were to charge what the per acre assessment that they charge to anybody who has SRP irrigation through a third party or directly through SRP, it's now to the point that it's $31 an acre for a year's worth of water, and you get like 3 acre-feet for that. But if you wanted to pay all the bills and not have the subsidy from the electric side, it would have to be $306 an acre, not $31 an acre. So it's almost 90% subsidized. It's not 89.5% subsidized right now. And not too many people know that. They don't know that, that all these SRP ratepayers out there who aren't, they said they had to get this rate increase rammed through to get an extra $50 million. Yet SRP paid, the electric side paid the water side, wrote them a check for $65.6 million this past year. More than the rate increase. So these kind of facts just aren't known. So this is the kind of tyranny and monopolistic poor behavior that happens.
I think they would benefit from an understanding of where SRP came from.
Yeah.
What it was for. It's really like a farmer thing.
Yep.
And the other thing is when you say the elected board, how are they elected? Who votes for them? Do I go down to who gets to vote? I mean, that kind of thing.
All right. So it was formed in the early 1900s for the farmers. It was originally formed as the Salt River Valley Water Users Association. And it is in order to dam up that water and use it all summer long, because the river ran dry in the summer. It was a little creek in the summer, the Salt River was. And it worked very well. Worked very well. A big farmer here in town just told me he's got California farmers coming and bidding on his land that he's letting lay fallow. He says, I'm letting it lay fallow so that it regenerates itself. And he says, we don't care, we'll put $1 million of fertilizer into it for you. And he says, well, sign me up then. You can produce carrots this year here because they have no water in California. And Arizona has such great water aquifers and water storage systems that the farmers from California are coming over here and bidding up the price of farmland. So that's the marketplace.
That's very interesting.
So it was then they formed the Agricultural Improvement and Electric District. It's called the district. So the water side's called the association, the electric side's called the district. And they both have elected boards of governors, board of directors. One's called the board of directors, the water side's called the board of governors. And they both they're both elected by water shareholders. Now I'm a water shareholder. I get 1 vote. The guy across the street from me, he's got 15 acres. He gets 15 votes. So it's really heavily skewed by the farmers in the outlying areas. In central Phoenix areas, it's pretty much whoever wants to vote. I noticed that one of the district board of directors guys got elected by 150 votes. So 150 acres was all the people who voted. Now the beautiful thing is you can sign up here, if you're in SRP area, you can sign up for permanent early voting through the mail, just like with our state and other elections. So it's beautiful that way. So encourage anybody you know to just go to SRP and say SRP voting. And you fill out your application and they tell you whether you're an eligible voter. And there's no monkey business. I'm an officially a shareholder in the Water Users Association just because I own land in Arizona, in the territory that's irrigated. SRP can never take that away from me. I can't sell it, I can't transfer it, it runs with the land. Yes.
What's the sociology of how they select the prime executive?
It's usually internal, and it's very much who the board of directors votes on it, and they get to see some interviews with the candidates and things like that. But
Is the existing executive, was he a long-term employee?
oh, they tend to be there a long time. I mean,
Okay, so this has
Richard
evolved
Silverman
down
was-
into a very narrow group of engineers.
Yeah, people who've been with the company for that long time. The one who's there now comes out of the finance side. Yes, back here.
Yeah, on page 15 at the top says get a solar system. I was hoping you'd give me some information on which technology or
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
If we have time, I mainly want to talk about the energy freedom stuff, but if we want to, we'll get Ernie back here and give us the go-ahead for that kind of thing. And then, yeah, question in the green shirt.
Yeah, what is the Corporation Commission doing as all this almost lawless goes on? I mean,
Well, we'll talk. I guess let's talk a little bit about the Corporation Commission. They, Mr. Randazzo has written quite a few articles. I encourage you to go to azcentral.com, sign up and pay if you don't have an account, and read those articles about all the shenanigans that are going on between the dark money that APS is funneling through supposed charities, even like the ASU Foundation, to try to influence the Corporation Commission election, and also all the things they're doing to funnel money to lobbyists to go out and spin the story in favor of APS and against the solar industry and things like that. Yes, question here.
One more comment. I recently had my smart meter removed, and I found out APS is under the Corporation Commission. SRP is not. They're under their board of directors.
That's correct. APS is under the Corporation Commission, and that's why if you go to their meetings, you'll find a much more judicious, balanced approach. SRP board members don't even have their own staff research. They don't have anybody to counter what management tells to them. There's 100 people in management producing these glorious PowerPoints and spreadsheets saying this is the way the data looks and this is what we got to do. This is the solution to this dilemma or this problem or the future. And they don't do that, and they don't even have a single staff member at SRP. If a board of directors member, a board member, elected member differs with that opinion, there's not a single person who's beholden to answer their questions or to do their research. They're literally left to do it on their own.
Ernie,
Yes.
Ernie's here, can he, get permission to talk about get a solar system off grid, grid tied, harbor freight, blah, blah, blah. Top of page 15. Ernie, can we have your permission to talk about?
Would you like to speak at length about that type of thing, Ernie?
Just a length, just an overview.
We're to that point now.
Well, I didn't, okay, we haven't already gone over it?
Yeah.
No.
Top of 15, increasing electric energy freedom for yourself, get a solar system. You know, this is I thought that's what we had been talking about. We got to this point. One thing that I wanted to make sure that was brought up, SRP and APS are two separate, totally different things. SRP was more at the beginning of the state, even before statehood, to where it was about farming, right? I mean, it was more about control of the water, and it's, you know, they, them, those that had the land, and they put up a bunch of their acreage to make it, and they paid it off later, and kind of they're richer than they were, and you're welcome. So it doesn't surprise me that they did what they did. APS, Arizona Public Service, is managed by the Arizona Corporation Commission, to where SRP is not.
Correct.
Now, APS was the Corporation Commission. They determined rates, what you'd increase or not. SRP, whenever you go into politics, and you have every year, they'll have a big giant candidate party down at a park in Tempe area somewhere. You go there, and what a lot of people don't realize is that that entire park, that infrastructure that's there, is a private park for the employees or the members or something of SRP. They are their own municipal corporation. They are like a city inside of cities, inside of counties, inside of state, inside. So they're a totally different entity that people do not understand how this thing works. So the fact that they do power also is interesting, and I'm hoping that with the solar thing, we're starting to find out that not only do they control your ability to backfeed or go in, they want to control the fact that you even got solar. So I'm going, okay, so what we were talking about here, in my situation, I don't want to get, because I rent here, I don't own it. So, I mean, we could work out a deal and I could, you know, whatever, that's not the point. My thing is I want to be able to take my solar production with me, wherever I move, wherever I go, wherever I bug out, wherever I camp, wherever I got a cabin, whatever, I have my production, I pull a trailer, I'm done. Now, Steve has showed me a lot of units that I could have more power on one trailer than an entire house system, and it'd be mobile. Now, Bob Anderson's been living in Tonopah for 12 years, and he's a supervisor out at Palo Verde changing the nuclear core. He's 10 miles from the plant, and he's been totally off for 12 years. Why? Because they said, well, Mr. Employee, you're down the street, but it's going to cost you $30,000 to get hooked up. He says, peace out, I'm just doing it myself. So he did. Now, the thing is that we've learned a lot. Over the past 12 years, the technology has gotten so much cheaper, and it's so much better. And it's so much of the batteries and capacity of storage, and it's going to get a lot less with the Gigafactory from Tesla Motors putting on their battery system that they're making, Tesla wall mount, whatever. Powerwall.
All true.
So this is, it's just going to plummet in price very quickly. So they understand this, and they don't want to incentivize it anymore. They want to stop it, or certainly get their cut from it. Because they were being subsidized so much by the green movement and the federal subsidies that you get and special interest that we want some. So when they did that, you know, all of a sudden people like Steve were demonstrating how real effective use of the power system and how you can use the grid. I'll give you an example. Before Bob moved out on his property, he lived in Maryvale. Now, he had the idea of, he got these old forklift batteries that were going to be thrown away and salvaged. He would take them and he reconditioned them and so on with little pulse things that fix lead acid batteries a little bit. So he got them working. He would charge his garage, half a garage full of batteries at night at 2 o'clock in the morning when the power was very cheap. He would go on that different rate depending on what time of day you did it. So he would charge the batteries at like a third of what the cost was of electricity, then use it during the day, you know, to run his home. So he was paying a lot less for power and didn't even use solar. So they go, so then we started to understand it was about battery storage. So right now, some people and companies, they're doing that in California, a lot of places. They're just charging up battery banks at night with cheaper power and then running their systems during the day and not even have solar. Companies don't like that either. You know, so this is all, it's all social and economic engineering to get people to react. And so they just wanted to use the power when it was off peak. Okay, fine. Well, I'll store that power and use it during the peak time I was going to use. Well, wait a minute. We didn't want you to do that.
Even sell it back.
Yeah, and then sell it back to them. They were making money on it. You know, so it's just, you know, this is what we're dealing with. So I want to make sure we understand the law, what the incentives were for them, why they were subsidizing and all encouraging before, because there were laws that said they had to have a certain amount of their new energy production done with alternative energy. Well, it cost a lot to do that, so what did they do? They incentivized guys like Steve to go and get these solar panels and such, and then they would claim that as their percentage. They were allowed to say, this is the new energy production that we created, alternative energy, renewable energy, but because it was on their system, they were to claim that they did it even though it was on your house. When those incentives and subsidies and stuff started to go away, well, then they don't like it anymore. I mean, how far off am I?
That's really close. They hoped to have a market to sell those renewable energy credits, but they never did have a market for them, really. The market never developed the way they thought. So they were, yeah, so it's been they're no longer interested in promoting solar unless it's big solar. Little solar is dead to them. They want complete control over it.
So is that to say that Tesla Powerwall?
Whoa, he's got the microphone.
Yeah, I'd like to shift gears and go backwards just a little bit to the smart meters.
Sure.
You mentioned the control aspects and the snooping aspects of it. What about the health aspects of smart meters? I've heard some really bad startups.
Well, it's
I can address that.
sure.
Okay, now, in the beginning, he said he wasn't going to be talking about the electromagnetic pollution of the smart meter, just the capacity of what it can do. Yes, we have discussed that, and we'll go down the rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
Well, why don't you let him answer?
He did, and then we started this presentation.
Yeah, it's radio electromagnetic spectrum. I don't know that it's any stronger than the cell phone tower a quarter mile from my house. So it's in the same frequency range. And so unfortunately our radios and devices are getting up towards microwave spectrum now, so it's serious energy. So the old radios, VHF and UHF radios, were around 150 megahertz to 450 megahertz, and that, now we're up into the gigahertz range for cell phones.
We refuse to have a smart meter put on our home. They came to do it. Now you have the wheel one that you can backfeed. Yeah. Now we have a digital one that you think it can register going back or spin backwards, or it won't, do you think? The one that I have here?
I think yours may not be sophisticated enough to detect that.
So, but it can it go backwards?
Yes.
Okay, so we acknowledge that, there is definitely a concern with the smart meter thing. But that's not what today is about. That's not what today is about.
Thank you, Ernie. Back over to, I'd sure like to get on this solar situation stuff. Is a Tesla Powerwall, is that a set of batteries that's available for the public, and at how much? What is Tesla Powerwall?
Yeah, Tesla Powerwall is a new lithium-ion chemistry-based battery system that's available in different configurations, and you can put multiple ones together.
Okay, and then on the top of that, there's something called solar panels. I've looked a little bit. It looks like there's 3, 4, 5 technology or whatever. I don't know what those words mean. Crystalline, blah blah blah. Which one is the one we want?
Well, if you can get it and afford it, monocrystalline is what to get, because that means it's sliced wafers. Polycrystalline is parts as parts. That's kind of like your chicken nuggets at McDonald's. Oh, excuse me. It's not made from a single wafer slice. It's made from wafer pieces and pieces of crystal. So it's multiple crystals forming one cell. And then there's thin film. And thin film is what it's more like a deposited process. They have these really sophisticated machines that lay down a layer of gallium, and then a layer of arsenide, a layer of silicon. And
then for brevity, so if I can afford the monocrystalline, but if I can't, which one do I go to as a secondary?
poly, and then thin film at the very last.
But the return on investment is what we need. And don't talk without the microphone. Nobody can hear you on the thing.
Oh, sorry.
the different technologies, which is the value that you get at the money and the return on investment. Because if it's a third the cost to get 3 times as much, and I produce twice as much as that, I'm better off getting the cheaper one if I have the space. If I got a space satellite, I might need, the cost of it is like in getting it into space or something. So here it's always about how many panels you need to make amount of energy that you need, and the cost of the panels has gone from what to what.
Well, I paid $5 in 1999 a watt, and now you can get them for 60 cents a watt. So that's 1/8 the cost.
Okay, so the best value is which one?
Well, they're all good. They're all polycrystalline and monocrystalline are all great value right now. You'll see a little bit of difference between them, and you just take the wattage. Look at the charts on them, and they're all a good deal. Thin film is hardly available to the public, except that it's like some off-run of production. First Solar, you've heard the name First Solar? They're a huge thin film company. They sell only to utility companies. If anybody has a thin film for First Solar, I don't know how they got it. If it's an individual, must have fell off the truck somewhere.
I have a question about potential pending legal action against some of these utilities. You talked earlier about how some people in the past, not too long ago, bought solar for their home, not only to save money, but to add to the value of their home, I imagine.
Yeah.
And now that the utilities are changing the game, and these people are going to have to pay more than even the regular grid customers because they have solar, now they've not only lost that investment, their home has probably devalued and depreciated, because who would want to buy that house now if you're going to have to pay more for electricity at that house? So it seems to me these types of homeowners have a claim, an actionable claim, for the depreciation of their home that these utilities have caused them. Has anyone tried to get them together in some sort of class action suit against these utilities?
Okay,
As
that's
a
a great
taking.
question. And so the utilities have been scared to death of this, and so all the ones in Arizona have proposed what's called grandfathering. So originally they wanted us to sign over our renewable energy credits for 20 years. So they've said we're going to give you 20 years. And that's also right in line with the expected minimum life of the solar system. The guarantees that come from the panel manufacturers are usually around 20 years. And my inverter was warranted for 10 years, and I doubled it to 20 for just a few $100s. And so that's, right now in Arizona, no one has cause. They don't have a claim against any utility because they've all been grandfathered in. And then when they stopped grandfathering them, they started putting big, bold, red letters on the application forms that says, hey, you're not guaranteed to get this in the future. That you're subject to rate to change. So people have asked me numerous times about whether they thought they could be a class action suit to be taken against SRP or APS or TEP. And I said, in 20 years, you'll have a claim. And I don't think you'll make any headway 20 years from now. So,
What a joke.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, can you describe your solar system right now, what you have now?
Bernie, I'll hold this if you want to lower it down a little bit again. Sure. I have a kind of a hybrid system. I started off with a grid tie because I got 2 bids. I got a on-grid, off-grid bid, and I got a grid-only bid. And I was just shocked at the difference in price. I mean, it was literally $15,000 more back then, 5 years ago, for my second system. My first system was also hybrid, and it ended up on, I had a rancher friend come by. It was built portable, like Ernie said. It was built on a shipping container. And it had the panels went up on ZoneWorks trackers, and then they stowed down on top of the container. And it was a really fascinating system. And a rancher friend of mine came by and said he wanted to expand the solar on his ranch. And I said, well, would you like me to help you build something? And he said, no, I want you to take this check, and my guys will pick that up. And I looked at the check and said, yeah, that'll work. And so they showed up about a week later and pulled that thing up on top of a trailer and drove it away to the ranch, and that's still operating up there just fine. It had no troubles except with the batteries. The batteries had to be replaced in 7 years. So my next system was a pure grid tie, and it was grid tied only for 4 years, and 3 weeks after it was installed, SRP had that huge transformer fire out in the East Valley, and I was out of power for 26 hours. And I was completely out of power. You need to understand this about grid-tied solar systems. They do not function when the grid is down. You don't get a light bulb's worth of energy out of them. So there are now, because of Fukushima in Japan just blew a gasket after Fukushima. They put trillions of dollars into solar and didn't have hardly an ounce of solar energy when they shut down all their nuclear plants that week. And so it was just terrible. So now to sell a new system in Japan, you have to have emergency outlets on the system. So now SMA, great company out of Germany, I have an SMA inverter on my grid tie system called a Sunny Boy. You've probably heard, if you read anything about it, you'll hear about it. And then SMA now makes a system that has an emergency power outlet on it. It doesn't put out as much as it will do when it's in non-emergency mode, but at least it'll do something. A neighbor of mine just put 2 of these in, and he runs his whole house in an emergency. We went over and threw the breaker, and the main breaker, and I took my jumpers over, and we jumpered from one outlet below the box into his main grid, and we were able to run everything that runs off 120 volts in his house off of his 2 emergency outlets. Refrigerators, chest freezers, TVs, alarm clocks, microwaves. Couldn't run them all at once, but you could run them. So it's that's one thing that can be done. So describing my system, it's Solar World Panels, which is a German company. Panels are made in the U.S. Solar World's a really aggressive, pretty well-engineered panel. Good company, very happy with the panels. Sunny Boy inverter, and that's about all there is to the system. You don't need any batteries or anything. Last September, I watched Craigslist for some bargains and stuff like that, and I saw a cabin type inverter on there, and I thought, wow, this is a $2,600 inverter, and the guy wants $1,000 for it. And I called him up and offered him $800, and he said, come and get it. And I just sat there in my garage for 3 years, and my contractor came out to do their annual inspection of the system, make sure the plug into the computer, into the inverter, make sure everything was happy, and everything was happy. And I said, so what's new in the solar world to him? And he says, oh, I just got back from a conference in Colorado and I went to a lot of classes on AC coupling. I said, AC coupling? I've heard about that. Tell me about it. And he says, the best equipment to buy is the Magnusign inverter. That's the best, the one that does the job best for this type of thing. If you have one of those, it will hook up, it will create a microgrid or a nanogrid, and you can be off the grid, and your existing solar system will work with this cabin system. They work perfectly well together. And I said, a Magnusign, eh? So I went over and opened up the box, and then he said, yeah, that's the exact model. And then I said, but this thing's like 5 years old. It sat somewhere, and he said, well, let's call up the manufacturer. And the manufacturer said, oh, you're 12 serial numbers past the point where we put the software in to be able to do AC coupling. So you're good. So we took that thing out of the box right then and hooked it up and threw the breaker. And I went and borrowed I took batteries out of my car, because you need batteries to run with an off-grid system. You have to have batteries. There has to be a ballast. The grid acts as your battery when you don't have for an on-grid system. So, and it worked perfectly fine. It charged up those batteries, and then it stopped charging them. And if it was fully charged and it had nowhere for the energy to go, it told the grid tie system to stop generating. And it would shut down for 5 minutes, and then it would start up again. It would run off the battery for 5 minutes, and it would start up again. And it worked like a charm. And we had a pole replaced about 100 feet from my electrical panel, the pole that services my house, and the power was out for 8 hours that day. And we just flipped the breaker and turned on the cabin system. The cabin system, if you're worried about any type of grid interruptions or even the crazy stuff that probably will happen someday, electromagnetic pulse It'll fry the electrical grid and fry everything hooked to it and fry things that aren't even hooked to it. It remains completely disconnected from the grid and from my home, except in emergencies. So it's legal. Yes?
Okay, let's go to a question here real fast, then ask your question. We're going to wrap it up for people that got to leave, and then, of course, we can stay and talk. Go ahead.
Steve, I had a question about this SRP problems. And what about just putting two 200-amp servers in the house and run the AC on one of them and run the rest of the house on your solar directly and a battery bank on the other, and you don't have these feedback issues?
Ernie alluded to that, and there are now plenty of devices on the market that will allow you to not feed back to the grid, even if you don't do the separate panels. The electronics are getting so sophisticated now. To keep out of the crazy way APS and SRP have written their new tariffs, say that, yeah, if the building has solar on it, you're on this rate. You get this special fee. We treat you special, charge you extra, just because you have solar on the house. It doesn't say if it back feeds into the grid, which is the only concern they should have. So there are actual physical ways to put in a sub-panel, to put the inverter between the sub-panel and the main panel, and then it never back feeds. The power comes into the inverter to charge the batteries, if needed, if the solar can't keep up, and then it goes out of the inverter and feeds the rest of the house. So we've got those options to do that. You can also buy, and that's the way to keep your nose completely clean with the utility who says that you've got solar on your house, you could backfeed us. And they say, no, it's not physically possible to backfeed. There is no electrical circuit between that sub-panel, this inverter, and you. There's no circuit.
Well, you
Can't
can
go.
put APS on the AC system, the heating system, and put solar on everything else.
Yeah.
Well, what he's saying is it doesn't matter. You can set it up there electronically, it kind of sees it the same way.
Yeah, I know. Or non-electronically, just put 2 separate meters.
Okay, one more question. All right, well, he's talking, you get that, go.
Do you really, on page 15, you say contact your elected representatives. Do you really think they're going to listen? It's going to do any good?
Yeah, it's amazing. I have made I'm in regular communication with some people at APS and SRP now because they'll take my call, my email, and they actually write back to me. Now, yeah, I guess after a few newspaper articles, I don't know. So, they were really nice to me beforehand. To some extent, they did throw their weight around and abuse me a little bit until I found out my rights and privileges more. Yeah, it really does make a difference. And every politician, elected politician, you need to talk to them about the tyranny, the energy tyranny that's going on, and all types of tyranny and abuse and form. But pick your battles. And if you find one that they have an interest in that kind of thing, pick your battle with them and talk to them, because it really does make a difference. That I've had numerous ones who I had a SRP board member who I thought didn't care one iota about this kind of stuff, which is pure rancher, pure farmer all the way. And now we are talking regularly. An embarrassing question got asked by a public member at the rate hearing said, would it be too much to ask you board members and vice president, president, and you executives to raise your hand if you have a solar electric system on your home? And the president said, no, I don't think that's too much to ask. So board members, can you respond to his inquiry? And they said, okay, go ahead. Right now, raise your hands, and not a soul raised their hands out of the entire 30 people. So they don't walk the walk in many ways, and so it's really interesting.
Thank you, Steve Neal. Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit. Frank's got to, he's got to do his thing, and then we're gonna go talk about some other stuff that we're gonna do. There's a petition that we had talked about on the air. What if there was an initiative that we filed just to say hello? So this would be a political issue. We know how to do that. Right after we had done the show, maybe the guy was listening. He created one. Did he file it?
No, we're not
working on a draft of it.
We got to get our ducks in a row here.
Okay. So this is going to be a political thing. And it's not so much a political as it's much an ideological, philosophical effort. Because of all the things that we can do, keep in mind, I filed a power buyback solar initiative for the state of Arizona in 1994. I've been working on this for a long time, waiting for this. So I don't ever think I didn't understand being off the grid was going to be na. So now that the opportunity is here, I'm like, here we come. And when? Jade Helm? No, I just love taking, it's political judo, man. You take their weight, whatever they think they're going to do, and slap them on the ground with it. So we're going to have some fun. Frank, let's go ahead and do some drawings and stuff.
All right, you hear me?
Just pass these around.
Yeah.
Take one.
I got a little anecdote, and as a property owner in Mesa,
These are not
at one time, I was a
They're not
voter
real.
for SRP.
We're not ready to get started.
And at that time, there was an engineer in Gilbert that I wanted to get on the board. So they had their election. I went down about 8:30 in the morning before I went to work. I walked in and they said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to vote." I said, "Oh my God, a voter!" It took them about 20 minutes to find the ballots. They weren't expecting anybody. They didn't vote it. So, as I understand, since then, me as a property owner in Mesa, we've assigned our vote to the city of Mesa.
That's possible.
I think that's the way it
Ernie
is.
gets irrigation, but he doesn't get to vote either, it appears.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
Get it through.
We have some drawings for some books. The books are over here on the table, courtesy of friends of Ernie.
Yeah, lots of really good new books. You're going to get a nice selection.
Okay, on your ticket, 7964. First chance at a book. 7964.
Dean!
Yeah.
Go get the one on
Yeah, I
Doug.
want to check this out, please.
Okay, second chance. 7970.
Yay!
Last chance. 7959. There you go. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank Ernie for all of the work, and thank Donna for the work that's going on here. Thank you very much. And I'm sure they would like a volunteer or two to help them clean up a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Don't forget, we have some of the papers left here. The balance of what I got left, I'm going to be taking to Portfest. And also, we went and distributed to about 24 firehouses. In the 90s, what we did is we always leave a dozen, all these different firehouses, because that is the only government agency that we know of that when you call them, you're glad they came, they don't have a gun, they're not going to give you a ticket, okay? So, but they still interface with the government and politics, because a fireman union endorsement means they put up and take down political signs. So they're always kind of involved, but a lot of them are more involved with the community than they are with the government, at least at the rank and file level. So we've always had really good success in distributing our papers at the firehouses, and it kind of gets leaked into the politics, We have some left. Make sure if you want the distributor having them, if you haven't had a chance to look at the paper, it's really awesome in my opinion. And take a stack with you. If you need more, let me know. Anything else, Frank? We good?
That's it. Thank you
Okay,
all for
please go
coming.
ahead and hang out with Steve. There's a lot more I'm sure you can learn from him. This is going to be an ongoing political thing. I have been waiting for this for over 20 years. And now it's come to fruition that now's the time to emphasize this very trait, the use of all this sun that we have. Thanks for coming.
No meeting till August?
We're not going to have a July or August meeting. July is July 4th, and we're going to be gone anyway. And August, the first weekend in August, is the Jackalope Freedom Festival. So we're going up to Baca Meadow on the rim, 30 miles north, right up on the rim, Forest Lakes in, excuse me a moment, God, guys. And we're going up to 30 miles north of Payson. And it's the first weekend, but it's going to be like a week. So if you go to the JackalopefreedomFestival.com, I think it is, you'll get all the information. Thanks for coming. We'll see you in September.